Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio. This is your host, Royce the Redneck Radio Man. Joining me today will be Andrea Perron. I was just talking about Maggie and had her on my mind, folks, and I just left that out. Forgive me. We're talking to Andrea Perron today, and she's the author of House of Darkness, House of Light, and they're going to be putting out a new movie. It's coming to the theaters near you, July 19th, called The Conjuring, based on her book, House of Darkness, House of Light, which is based on I'm going to smack myself, Andrea's childhood and the house that she was growing up in that was haunted. And if I remember correctly, I read somewhere that it was called the Arnold Mansion, and I can let her correct me on that if I made a mistake. So, first off, let me remind everybody, if you want to call in and ask questions, the number is 832-632-7904. For people that are listening elsewhere, we'd love to have you join us at www.talknowradio.com. Reminder, everybody, Paranormal Palace Radio has now become Talk Now Radio. The whole idea was to still do paranormal topics, but to branch out into many other different topics as well, to have a wider variety of topics and material to share with you guys, as well as for me to learn. So I hope everybody enjoys the new show and everything that's going to be coming with it down the pike. I'm still working on new guests in other areas, and in the meantime, I've got my regular paranormal guests to fall back on, which I don't think I'll ever run out of those, thank God. Also, if you want to know more about Andrea or The Conjuring or her book, House of Darkness, House of Light, you can go to www.houseofdarknesshouseoflight.com, and she's got links up, I think, to The Conjuring. And this here movie was being produced, I believe it was, by, if I remember correctly, the name was Jimmy Wall. Is that correct, Andrea?
No, James Wan is the director.
James Wan. I was close. I'm glad I asked you to correct.
You weren't even remotely close, Royce.
That's not remotely close?
Not even remotely close. But that's okay, because now we've got it clear.
They were JWs both. So.
Well, they were JWs. Okay, I'll give you that. But I wanted to just clarify one thing. The movie is not based on my books.
It's not?
No. In fact, the producers were given material from the books. And when it came time to have the screenplay that Chad and Carrie Hayes wrote looked over by the upper echelon producers at Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema, they said that it was too intense and that it needed to be toned down. And so they had to fictionalize some things and tried to wrap the story with broader arms. You know what I'm saying? And, of course, it's impossible to take 10 years of experiences and to condense them into a 2-hour movie. It's virtually impossible. So what they did was they cherry-picked, and they took a little of this and a little of that, and I think that they have very successfully managed to really paint very broad strokes of what our family went through in the house. However, this film is based on the careers of Ed and Lorraine Warren, the paranormal researchers who conducted the investigation of our home in the mid-1970s. And it's not only about their career and other things that they've done and how their career came to be, but also the bulk of the story is it's based on their case files and their own memories of what took place in that house. And it is really a testament to them as what many perceive to be the godmother and godfather of the paranormal movement, something that was once a curiosity has, as you well know, become a movement. And it's from their perspective. So if you want to know the entire story of what happened in our home, you have to read the books, and you will find that they are very different than what the film is. And that doesn't mean that the film isn't spectacular. I had the opportunity to go to Hollywood, California over Easter weekend and meet Mrs. Warren again after 40 years. We immediately embraced. We both cried all through the movie. There was nothing about it that scared either one of us because, of course, it's a case of been there, done that. But it was so emotional to see her and her husband, her dearly departed husband, Ed, so lovingly portrayed in the film. And it's just bizarre to see my family portrayed in the film. And I'll tell you, the woman that plays my mother, Lily Taylor, if she doesn't end up with an Academy Award nomination, then something is wrong there's a disturbance in the force, because she did an incredible job with a very, very difficult role. And the movie is not what people expect. It's not. It's an adult film. It's rated R. It's rated R with purpose and reason. The MPAA, the rating commission, was originally going to let it through with a PG-13, and then they reconsidered their position. And they wrote to Warner Brothers and said, we have to put an R on this film. And, of course, Warner Brothers threw a fit and said, wait a minute, that's millions of tickets. And they said, look, we can't let this go. And so then Warner Brothers said, what can we take out of the film that will give it a PG-13? And the commission said nothing. It's just too scary. So
it was they wanted a rated R based on the horror content.
Yes. And, I don't think of it as a horror film. I'll tell you, it's the only film that I've ever seen start to finish other than The Sixth Sense that would qualify as a scary movie. I just don't watch films like that at all, and never have. But it was riveting from start to finish. It was absolutely riveting. And I'll tell you, when they did the original tests of the film months ago, and they have audiences come in and they agree to review it, give their impressions of it after the film is over, they suddenly had people leaving the theater during the film. And, of course, they can't just walk out. They have to say why. And apparently it's so intense that their own imaginations, the what if, the what next, the what might happen, is what was driving them out of the theater. It's pretty over the top. But the thing that's most amazing about it is that that's just a fraction of what it was actually like.
Well, I can kind of understand the concept of what you're talking about there with the imagination. I mean, this is kind of gross, but it's also synchronistic that, well, we have a roach problem here, and we was talking about it during breakfast this morning, and my wife starts making faces like, squeamish. And I'm like, she used to be a nurse aide. Why be so squeamish? And I was kind of fussing at her, and then it dawned on me that in order for her to be squeamish, she must be visualizing what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And that made her make faces and cringe during the meal, kind of like what you're talking about their imaginations were doing in the theater, in other words.
Well, what they were telling the producers as they were leaving the theater was that they were so emotionally invested in the family that they were terrified that something might happen to the children, what was going to happen to the children. And they didn't want to see that. And so that's why they were leaving. I get that. It would be the kind of, the only film that I ever walked out on was A Clockwork Orange, and I've never seen the entire film because once I got to the point where I could no longer tolerate what was unfolding before my eyes, I didn't want to go any further. In the same way, it holds you. It kind of grabs you by the throat and it holds you. I mean, people are going to be talking about this film for many, many years to come. There is no question in my mind. And the thing that's so stunning to me is that it captures the essence of our story, but there's so much more. And of course they can't do everything that they wanted to do around it. I don't even know how they could possibly make a film and then rate it based on the books. You wouldn't give it an X. There's nothing gratuitous in it. There's no violence. There's no, no real violence. There's no sex. There's no foul language. But the disturbing intensity of the film is what drove that rating and what drove people out of the theater as they were previewing it.
Well, to me, that says two things. One, you want to be really careful about whether or not you want to let your kids into it, even if you go with them. Two, if you have a girlfriend you want to take on a date, that's a perfect place for closeness.
Oh, it sure is. But I agree with you wholeheartedly, Royce, about the first point that you made. No children should see this film. Children should be allowed to be children. They should be allowed for their imaginations to unfold naturally, and they should not be bombarded with images like this.
And you don't want to give them nightmares.
Exactly. It would be absolutely inappropriate for anyone below the age of 17 to see this film.
Below the age of 17?
Yeah, well,
because a lot of people don't let their 13-year-olds see it.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't. They really shouldn't, because if they do, they will regret it. I wouldn't say anybody. I don't know how the rating system even works. I thought an R was, and nobody below the age of 17 could get in to see the film. So, or maybe it's NC-17. I don't know. I don't know how it works. Don't bring your kids to see this film, okay? Let me just get that out in the world. Do not bring your children to see this film, or you will regret it, because they will never, ever be able to shed the images from it. And that's the best forewarning that I can. Let them grow up. They can watch it later. Everybody's got a big screen TV. They can watch the DVD in 4 or 5 years if they're fascinated by the subject. But it would be a terrible error in judgment to bring children to see this film. And I hope that the movie theaters around the country really enforce the rating on this because of the nature of the material.
I'm sure they will. Well, I sure hope they will.
I sure hope they will. Well, a lot of them don't, though, because they just want to fill the seats. And I don't believe there will be any trouble in any theater filling the seats around this film. I really don't. I mean, even the trailer are blowing people's minds. There's 2 of them out. And they just released the new TV spot, which is way toned down. That was released, I believe, yesterday. I posted it on my wall. Anybody that wants to see anything that's going on around the film can go to me on Facebook, either my personal page, which is lovely and a great place to go meditate, or they can go to my book and author page, which is House of Darkness, House of Light on Facebook, and it will keep them completely informed on everything that's going on around the books and the release of the film.
Okay, now, one thing I want to do before I forget is I want to thank you for correcting me on the producer's name. I'm not real good at remembering names unless I'm around them a lot, in other words.
Well, he's the director, actually. The producers, there are a number of producers of the film. New Line Cinema gave this a great deal of attention and actual affection. And, at first when I heard that James Wan, who's famous for the Saw movie and Insidious, I said, oh no, he's a slasher movie director. And I didn't give him nearly the credit that he deserved. But when we went out to the set last year, my family went out, except for my mother, who opted to remain home. But the rest of us went. And when we had the opportunity to meet with him and discuss this at length, we all realized instantly that it was in very good hands and that he took very seriously his role as the one at the helm of this production, because he's keenly aware that he's making a film about people who are still alive and well. And this is not a retrospective in terms of, somebody that lived 100 years ago, they're dead and gone and can't object. He's very well aware that this film will have a dramatic impact on our lives as a family, that it will have a dramatic impact on Mrs. Warren's life, and he was always remained thoughtful. But the thing that I credit him most with is that we as a family were very concerned that the 5 young ladies who played us in the film would end up being as traumatized in their youth as we were in ours. And I think that James Wan worked diligently and lovingly to embrace these young ladies and to help them always remain clear on the fact that this is a movie and this is a script and you are completely surrounded by light and love and this entire cast and crew is here for you. And if you're frightened, you know, I'm just paraphrasing a little bit of what he said, but it wasn't even so much what he said, it's how we saw him interact with these kids that was so meaningful and really gave all of us pause and brought us some ease, some comfort in knowing that, you know, hopefully that they could walk away from this theatrical experience not jaded in any way or tormented in any way by the experience of it.
Now, see, this part kind of strikes me as unusual. I mean, I would think most people would know going into it that it was just a film and it was acting and it was all props, and that even if it's based on a true story, they're not actually in the haunted house itself, in other words. Is that common for people to, I guess you could say, get themselves so involved and wrapped up in their character that they could get traumatized even in a non-dangerous situation?
Yes. Yes, it happens all the time.
So these actors usually, just kind of throw their imaginations into it?
Well, they're recreating something that they were told, oh, the birdie's just singing to me. They're recreating something that they know on some level was real. And even when actors get involved in scripts that aren't real, that are purely fiction, it can sometimes trigger experiences that they wouldn't. It opens doors, as it were. And some people might dispute that, but I think that there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. There have been many, if you do any research on this, you will find that there have been many films, scary movies, horror films that have been made that left certain participants scarred in much the same way that there have been archaeologists who have gone digging where they did not belong, who paid the consequences. So, you know, or people that go up into certain areas of Hawaii and take rocks that they're not supposed to take and then hurry to find their way back so that they can replace the rock that they took. You know, there are, before their lives go completely to hell. You know, so it's, I guess a lot of it depends on your belief system, but the fact of the matter is there are mysteries that we have not even, that not only have we not solved, but there are mysteries we have not even identified in this world and in this life that we live and share as one. And ultimately, I think that what comes from our story, our family memoir, is a couple of realizations, and one is that there is something, absolutely, something beyond our mortal existence, that it's not just ashes to ashes, dust to dust, that our bodies die, but that our spirits and our souls linger and remain and transmute into some other form of energy, and in some cases remain behind earthbound for whatever reasons. And no one can tell you what those reasons are except the spirits themselves. And anyone who claims to be an expert in the paranormal, an expert who has all the answers, is at worst being disingenuous with their followers and at best being disingenuous with themselves. You know, because there are mysteries in this world that we may never find the answers to. But I think that if we do find the answers, they will come when science and faith unite and when there is a real merging of the two thought processes that create both in our lives. And I think that perhaps down the road we might have a few answers, but I think there will always be many more questions.
I think it was actually planned by God for there to be more questions than answers, so we'd always have something to look forward to keep the curiosity going.
Yeah, exactly, so that our minds are ever expanding, much like the universe in which we dwell.
Well, that, and I think also, at least from my perspective, to keep the fascination, because without mystery, where is the fascination?
And that's true. That's very true. You know, our lives wouldn't they be just infinitely boring if we all thought the same and lived the same way and believed the same things, and there was never any discourse, there was never any intellectual curiosity.
You can program a computer like that.
That's right. I mean, fact of the matter is there are computers on this planet that think far more deeply than some human beings.
Oh, I have seen actual news articles with pictures of, what they're coming out with in recent times for androids and human robots, and these things look just like you or me.
Mhm. Yeah, that's my nickname.
What's that, robot or android?
Android, yes.
Android Andrea, right?
I think it was Christine who started that, because I started years ago using her nickname, which I am not allowed to repeat on the air, or she'll beat me to a pulp.
Would that be Christine Day?
Christine, no, my sister Christine.
Oh, okay.
Started calling me Android about a decade ago, and she says it so freely and so frequently that it's beginning to stick among my family. I'm like, please come up with something else, okay? Just anything else, anything. I like Annie. Annie works for me. There's just...
Make her stop.
I know. Yeah, we still whine to our mother. God bless her. And she still puts up with it, too. She's like, girls, play nice now. Now stop. It's just adorable. But I'll tell you something, Royce. This has been, I have a huge article, feature article coming out next week in Entertainment Weekly, the periodical magazine. And it's all about the backstory of this film and everything that came to pass around it. And it's going to be a very, very interesting article, and I think that it's going to start garnering some major attention because we divulged some things to the writer who put this together that have never been in print before, things that came from Volume 3 that have never even been released yet. I'm working diligently on editing. I'm in my final edit of Volume 3, and it goes to the publisher on Monday. So hopefully it will be out right around the break of the film. And I've already got people asking for it. I've got numerous people asking for it. In fact, I had people asking for Volume 3 before I actually had my hard copy of Volume 2 in hand, because they loaded it onto their electronic devices and read it before the UPS truck was able to get my books to me. It's been a wild ride. I have to tell you, it's been a wild ride, but I'll look back on this period of time.
You wouldn't trade it for $1 million.
Yep, transformational period in my life, and to finally feel that I've done my part, that I've birthed my set of triplets. I never had children of my own, but now I know that I will leave something behind in the world, and that's comforting to me.
Well, since you said that about the other books, I've now got to ask you, is there any thing in the works for the rest of your books and them going to future movies?
Well, I can't really talk about that right now. So sorry. I'm truly sorry about that. So
I had to get you off in private out of the show and talk about that off the air.
Yes.
Okay.
But if that's any indication to people, I don't believe that this story will simply stop with the books. No.
Okay.
But I will tell you that should it go to screen, I will have oversight, and it will tell the truth. It will tell the most compelling parts of the story, and will do so in a way that will not terrify people, but that will engross them in the story. Because the fact is, we were a perfectly normal family that moved into that farm, and we left as a paranormal family. And when you open that door and you are touched by spirit, it's a door you can never close. It remains with you lifelong. And my mother always says, we left that house, but that house will never leave any of us. And it won't, because those were images and experiences that were seared into our memory banks, that were absolutely impaled into our minds. And as I constructed these 3 books, and they were originally supposed to be one, and it was just too much to print as a single volume, so it became a trilogy. And as I put this manuscript together in its first form as a single manuscript, and did my comparative analysis through the way, thinking, Nancy might remember it a little differently than Christine did or Cindy, It was absolutely amazing to me. The most jaw-dropping aspect of this entire trilogy of books is that when I compared everyone's notes and everyone's stories, I had to change one season from spring to fall for around the details of an episode which occurred about halfway through our tenure at the farm. And that was it. There were no other changes that were necessary. Everyone remembered it exactly the same way.
Wow. Now, that's something else, and everybody remembers it exactly the same way. I want to take a moment out to let you know real quick, that Maggie shouted out in the chat room, "Congratulations, Andrea. You are the proud mom of triplets."
And this mama is some kind of tired, let me tell you. 5 years gestation period on these kids. Oh, my God. Well, please, Maggie, it's so good to hear from you. I wish I could hear her voice. But, that's our time will come to chat. But
well, she can always call
lovely.
in.
Yeah, oh, good. Well, tell her to call in. We can talk. But I have several people that will either listen to this live or will listen to it once it's archived. And for my consistent followers, the ones that are always there, and what I call my foot soldiers, the ones that carry the torch for the tale. They probably, at some point, it will get redundant for them because they've poured through every page of the books and, they've practically memorized entire passages, and bless their hearts, I couldn't ask for a more loyal following than I have. But the thing that's been most comforting and endearing to me are the multitude of letters that I receive from my readers who pour their hearts out, and I answer all of my mail individually and privately, and I never pass that chore off to anyone else, because if they have invested the time and the energy, the mental and the emotional energy to take this journey with me, then the very least that I can do is to acknowledge them and to help provide them some solace as well, because many of the letters I receive recount stories from their own childhood and incidents that occurred in their lives that they haven't shared with anyone because they were afraid they wouldn't be believed. And it did require a quantum leap of faith on our part to finally tell this story more than 30 years after we left the farm. I began writing it in 2007, and about 6 months in, I realized that I couldn't do it alone, that I had to be with my family, and I packed up my belongings and my critters, and I moved from Rhode Island to Georgia and moved in with my sister Christine and my mother that have a pretty little farm just west of Atlanta. And I've been here now for 5 years, and the bulk of the manuscript was written here, and everything else that has occurred around this story has happened from this place. And I've had my family completely surrounding me all that time. 5 of the 7 of us live right here in North Georgia, and my father and my sister Nancy live in Florida, so they're close by as well. And it was thousands of hours of interviews and conversations and reliving things that were difficult to relive. And even though some of us would admit that it was somewhat cathartic, there are others who have said it was just difficult all over again. So it's every one of us, all 7 of us, had a different reaction to this process. And, April cried a lot, and my mother was the one that remains most stoic, but my mother is also the one that said she will never, ever step foot back on that property in Rhode Island again, and that she is completely done with that place and that period of her life. And so she can intellectually revisit it without having it tear her apart emotionally, but that has not been the case with all of my sisters. Okay.
Now, in the chat room, Maggie was asking if the house or farm is still standing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it's still very much standing and still very much haunted. Every time I go back, something happens in that house. And I'm the one that goes back frequently. I'm the one that always seems drawn back to that property. And I ended up meeting the current owner in an utterly inexplicable way 25 years ago. She walked in the front door of my restaurant and had gone to school with my partner.